Hello and welcome to the CBB SuperShow, brought to you by the FTN Network. I'm your host, Walter Waddell, aka Dub Deuce 85, rocking the Prize Pick shirt. We got the Husky stuff behind us. We are in it to win it. How is everybody doing tonight? Thank you for tuning in. I see people trickling in here as we get started. It is Wednesday, if you can believe it, March 15th, right around 9:32 p.m. over on the West Coast where I'm at, well after midnight for those of you on the East Coast. I want to thank you right now for those of you who have continued on these late nights to tune in to me live. You know, we're just over a month into the off season of college basketball. And still, you guys have been supporting not only myself, but FTN in general. But the Super Show is doing great. And we are providing a ton of transfer portal information, off-season stuff, and the like. So I am very, very appreciative. Before we delve into what we're going to talk about tonight, please take the time, if you're watching on YouTube, to hit the like button. It helps a tremendous amount within the the algorithms there. All that support. If you're watching on Twitter, which a lot of you are, it says, please make sure you like that tweet from FTN and share it, retweet, all that good stuff. It all helps in the end. I appreciate it very, very much. And in case you're tuning in for the first time, at DubDeuces85 on all social media platforms, that's where you can find me. I talk a lot about college football, college basketball, niche sports in general, the occasional take about, pop culture, and occasionally we'll talk about some other sports, some other stuff, other things happening. Sometimes we talk about pro sports, but for the most part, we're all in on the college sports. For me personally, I haven't really been playing DFS since the season ended, just kind of doing my thing. The FTN network, we just went through a big site change. We've updated a lot of our stuff. And we have what I truly believe to be the best team in the industry. We have some really sharp minds for golf, MLB, NBA. So just been tailing our MLB team's picks for betting purposes there. MLB is a total mind. You know what, though? I got to tell you, those of you who grind MLB, you have a lot of mental toughness and testicular fortitude, because it is a real tough grind, the MLB. But I'm a big basketball and football guy, and we had the WNBA debut yesterday. And even though FTN is not covering it officially, meaning we're not doing articles and shows regarding the WNBA, but that doesn't mean we aren't still talking about it. The FTN Discord is a very happening place. All sports, we are really involved. It's a very in-depth Discord. The community is awesome. It's not just content providers talking in those Discords. The community itself, they're getting plays, they're talking about things, starting lineups, all of that. So we have a great community. Queisenberg, who is a superhero of sorts, does our NBA content, Prize Pick shows. He's great. He also grinds the WNBA, and he's a very sharp mind. He and I have been hanging out in the WNBA DFS Discord on FTN, as well as the WNBA betting Discord, and the first 2 days of the WNBA have been great. We have been able to, in true leveraged fashion, which is kind of our thing, been able to avoid some serious chalk busts in the first two WNBA slates, hit on some nice lower-owned plays, and props. Let me tell you, the WNBA prop market is really, really soft. We have done some serious damage already these first 2 days. Josh Gross is another sharp mind who does tennis. He does, WNBA, women's college basketball. He's an absolute star. He knows his stuff. We are beating up on the props for the first 2 days. The thing about the WNBA props, you have to be really early so far. They are very soft, like Rakia Jackson of the Sparks. She started off as 13.5 points. Love the under. Because I'm on the West Coast, I got a little bit of a late start. Got that number at 11.5. Not even 2 hours later, and 3.5 hours prior to lock, that number dropped all the way to 8.5. Couldn't really feel comfortable about that, even though she scored 7. So we did hit our under 11.5, which we got it in as. The 8.5 would have hit as well. It just shows you how these books are changing these numbers so drastically. Marina Mabry's PRA was around 21.5 on DraftKings. It ended up at, I think, 25 by the time the game locked. She did hit the over. So it just shows you Dearica Hamby, who we loved. Zach really loved her fantasy points prop on Prize Picks. By the time the show ended, not even an hour later, Prize Picks pulled her fantasy point total down and off the board, and it did not return. Her point prop did at 13.5. We hit that, and of course, that did very well. So some good money to be made in the WNBA prop market. So hang out with us. If you're a member of FTN in the Discord, we're dropping those plays. Get them in early. Plenty of bankroll building opportunities here. The nice thing about the WNBA, it's an enjoyable league to watch. Whatever your opinion is on it, whatever. But with Caitlin Clark and some of the other stuff going on, there's a lot of newer people watching the WNBA and a lot of casuals playing the DFS side for the first time and betting for the first time. Caitlin Clark's overs were massively hit yesterday by the public. I didn't love that matchup against the Sun. They're a tough defense. She struggled, 10 turnovers. Days will be better for her, but the books made a decent chunk of money there against the public, hitting those Caitlin Clark unders. All right, so that's enough of the WNBA for now. Just wanted to put that out there that we're still covering it, talking about it, doing our thing. We just don't have official articles, but the Discord is popping. All right, so tonight I want to talk about, we've been doing our transfer portal thing. We're going to do a quick recap to, some of the major news that's transpired, highlight a couple of the top names still remaining in the portal. And then I want to talk about for a bit here the NBA draft stuff that's going on. So the G League camp just took place. There was 5 players who got invited to the draft combine. That's taking place. We did measurements just a couple of days ago. Yesterday and today, there's been scrimmages. So I've got box scores, some stuff to talk about there. And the main reason I want to kind of, bring that up is to see who do we think is going to stay in the draft, who's going to come back and be available to us in the college basketball DFS streets, who's done well thus far, who hasn't, etc., etc. So that's what we're going to talk about. But we're going to start off talking about the Washington Huskies. I'm a big Huskies fan. If you know me, you know that. If you're new to the show, you're going to learn that. That is my hometown team. I support them through bad and the good. I'm not a fair weather fan. We had a great football season. Awesome. Our basketball team, things have struggled. But we are on the up and up. We are going to have a potential tournament team, and I think we're going to do some things here. Now, it's funny. The Huskies, they don't get a lot of hype by anyone outside of the West Coast or the Pacific Northwest, and that's fine because they haven't been very good lately. But they went out, and one thing you got to know about Washington, especially going into the Big Ten, for football and basketball, they have a ton of NIL. We know NIL is the big thing right now. Players getting packages for name, image, likeness. That was supposed to be like you get to do commercials, you get to sell autographs, merchandise, whatever. It's turned into a deal where there's collectives. They're raising money from donors, alumni, whatever, and they are offering these NIL packages to players prior to coming there. And one player in particular that we really wanted in Washington as we hired Danny Sprinkle, former Montana State coach. He was at Utah State last year, and one player has followed him throughout his various jobs, and that's Great Osabor, who had been in the transfer portal out of Utah State and Montana State for quite some time, kind of withered it down to Texas Tech, Louisville, and Washington. Washington was the favorite. Obviously, he's played under Danny Sprinkle every year of his collegiate, history. Louisville made a last-ditch effort to pay him a big, sizable amount. Washington came over the top because, again, we have an NIL collective that has to be considered top 15, maybe even top 10 in the country. And you might look at me and hear me and scoff and be like, Washington? But trust me when I tell you, they're going to be in the mix in both football and basketball every single year for top-end players because they have a competitive NIL package, collectives, donors, alumni who want to see this program win. Seattle, Pacific Northwest, Washington State fans in general. I lived in Washington State for a large portion of my life. Been in California a lot for the latter part of my life. Vegas, been bouncing around, but Washington is where I ultimately call home, whether I'm there or not. And I can tell you the fans in Washington go crazy. They will support these programs. The Mariners, they've kind of you might look at Mariner games and be like, oh, their attendance sucks. They supported them for a long time, but the management of the Mariners was awful. They're trading away their best players all the time, like just spitting on the fans. And it got to a point where it's like, we can't support these guys anymore until a change happens. Still supported the team. Obviously, that playoff drought ended. Mariners are back to being kind of struggling right now. But I'll tell you, Washington fans are hungry, and we want the NBA back. Supersonics will be back. Storm attendance is high, supporting the team. So the Huskies, they're going to have money. They're going to get players. They're going to be good in both of those major sports, and they're also good in volleyball and softball and everything else. Anyways, we go out and we say, you know what, Louisville, it's time for you to step off. You already took Koren Johnson from us, one of my favorite players. You were in the mix to take Wesley Yates from us, who was redshirted, injured last year, couldn't play. We got him out of Texas, highly rated recruit. Get out of here. Stop trying to take our guys. We don't want this. Peyton Siva from years ago, like, get out of here with this. Stay out of my backyard. Anyways, Washington comes over the top, huge NIL package, over $2 million. And as it's been reported by Jonathan Givony and some other highly trustworthy, people in the NCAA landscape and the media, reporting that Great Osabor on paper is the highest, as of right now, highest paid college player for NIL. Now, people are maybe a little confused by that because it doesn't mean he's going to be the highest paid player in college basketball. I'm not so sure I believe he's going to have the biggest package either. But we did spend a sizable amount of money to get him here. That's just the day and age that we live in currently. But you can't sit there and tell me like RJ Davis at North Carolina with all the deals that are going to be waiting for him, he's going to make more money. Okay. Hunter Dickinson at Kansas, all the deals waiting for him, commercials, endorsements, whatever, he's going to make more money than Great Osabor. The collective may have handed a package that as of this moment is the highest, but Great Osabor is not the highest paid college basketball player. And when the season starts, he won't be. So we got to kind of drop that. There's also a lot of people who are saying, oh my God, they spent their entire budget on Great Osabor. What are they going to do? Like, what are we talking about? We have a right now 11, 12 man roster. They still have one more scholarship left. We have gone out and gotten a multitude of players. Osabor is not the only transfer that they've gotten. They got another, 5, 6, 7 guys out of the portal. Plus they got Jace Butler, who decommitted from Illinois. He's going to go here now, a top 100 kid, 4-star. So they've built a roster, and there's a lot of disrespect for what this roster is going to be, but the guys that they got fit Danny Sprinkle's system quite well. So it's not just Great Osabor. And there's so many people saying, oh my God, they spent all this money on Osabor. If he doesn't deliver a tournament appearance at minimum or a second weekend appearance, like, it's going to be a total failure. They should have spread out their budget more. Well, they did. I mean, we went out, we got DJ Davis, who's a dead-eye three-point shooter. It's about 35% at Butler, but typically we're going to expect him to shoot 40%, right? Makai Mason from Rice, 14-point per game transfer. He's going to be fantastic. A starter. He's going to get a lot of opportunities that would have went to Koren Johnson. He's nice. He had other high major programs interested in him. We're not talking about a scrub player here. Tyler Harris from Portland. He's only a sophomore. He averaged 12 and 7 at Portland, shot 36% from long range. Tyler Harris is one of those like diamond in the rough type players. There were other P5 programs on him. There was a lot of people trying to hold in that hype because they wanted to get him on the cheap or, have him without other competition. Tyler Harris of Portland, remember that name. Lewis Courtwright, 10-point, 4 assists, 4 rebound guy from Rhode Island. Handle the rock a little bit. He's a decent defender, not a great 3-point shooter, but he's going to get time. He's another tough-nosed guard. Okay. Chris Conway, a bit of undersized guy, can play some 4 or 5. He was at Oakland, the fun team that, obviously Jack Golke is the story of that team, but Chris Conway was a contributor, 10 points, 4 rebounds. He's going to be a piece in the front court. And KC Ibekwe, a near 7-footer, transferred in from Oregon State, shot blocker, solid defender, solid rebounder, a nice piece. Jace Butler, again, I talked about him, the decommit from Illinois. We also get Zoom Diallo, McDonald's All-American top 40 kid, and then the return of Christian King, who redshirted last year, star in the Seattle prep area. We'll see if he plays. William Breidenbach is returning. He had solid minutes on the team last year. And Frank Kepnong, if he can stay healthy, but he is back, and we have 1 scholarship left. That roster is not a scrub roster. I think you'll be surprised that they win games in the Big Ten. They are a team that is going to absolutely mutilate others on the defensive side of things. And if Great Osabor has solid shooters around him, look out. This team can be very good. Am I biased? Absolutely. But I still think this team is much better than the media is giving them credit for. And it's also kind of irritating because if Great Osabor would have went to Louisville for $2 million, people would have been praising it. Oh my God, Louisville is going to the Final Four. Great Osabor is going to carry them. They've got a great roster around him. Louisville has a great roster. They've done a good job. Pat Kelsey is a killer. But when you look up and down their roster, is it that much better than Washington's? No. They've got good pieces. Maybe they arguably have a better overall star power. But as far as those rosters go matched up, it's not as if Louisville is some 50-point favorite if they were to play heads up, right? So just had to get that off my chest and support my Huskies, and also talk about Great Osabor and how much he actually got paid. Hey, Mike, thanks for checking in. I am always on the grind. I try to be, man. It's the off season, but we're still out here. We're still out here doing our thing and trying to contribute any way we can here with FTN. Preseason NFL will be coming around the corner. Week 0 of the college football season starting August 24th. Have already begun to map out what that content's going to look like. Very, very excited about that. All right. Let's look at the remaining guys in the portal, and then we'll get into this draft talk. So most of the talk is going, of course, Arkansas and Kentucky. Everybody wants to talk about those 2 teams. Kansas with the Riley Kugel stuff. There's going to be so much to digest here with how these teams look. Every roster in the country has basically changed a minimum of 3 or 4 players, a lot 5+. It's going to provide a unique opportunity for us in the beginning of the season. We already have a pretty good edge in November of college basketball season, dating back to the draft street days, in 2012, 2013. But we're going to have an even bigger edge, which I keep harping on. We're going to, you'll be able to go back and look at timestamps of these shows and be ready, because you'll know, hey, Walt talked about this team, this conference, this prospect. We know what to expect. That first slate comes out. This guy that nobody's talking about is 4K, 5K. But wait a minute. This is a diamond in the rough play. Let's use him. Let's see what happens. Oh my God, all of a sudden 5% owned. He goes off. We have ourselves a nice first slate. So that's what I'm angling for, and that's what I am trying to prepare all of us, not just myself, but all of you as well, for that first part of the season before we flip the switch and go to college football content here in about a month. All right. So Coleman Hawkins, and he's somebody we're going to talk about here in depth because he's doing the draft stuff. He actually retweeted when Great Osabor's deal was announced, and Hawkins had he's a high-level troll, first of all. He loves trolling fan bases, so respect, like Marshall Henderson. But he retweeted and said, oh, is he, or something to that effect, meaning like he thinks if he comes back and does not stay in the draft, that he'll be the highest paid collegiate player. And that may be the case. There has been a lot of talk about North Carolina being linked to Coleman Hawkins if he does come back to the collegiate ranks. North Carolina is in desperate need of a big man. They have whiffed on Clifford Almarui. Jonas Idu, several other front court options. They really need a big man. If they don't get one, they'll still be okay because RJ Davis is going to score 1,000,000 points. But they definitely need somebody, besides Washington to man the paint there. So we'll see if Hawkins becomes that option for them if he returns. DJ Wagner, transfer from Kentucky, expected to go to Arkansas. I think the reason he hasn't gone to Arkansas yet is a bit odd. You would think that would be what he does is follow Calipari there, like so many other players that were at Kentucky with him last year did. I still expect that to happen, but he's taking his time on that, and that's fine. Jameer Watkins, who has declared for the draft and is at the combine doing his thing, and he had a pretty nice showing today. We'll talk about that. From Florida State. I ultimately think there's a really good chance that he comes back to college basketball because of his NIL opportunities and his chance to improve his stock further. However, because he had such a nice scrimmage today, got box scores pulled up, we'll talk about those. If that continues, he works his way into a first-round promise. He won't be back because this is obviously a weaker draft, and there is going to be a possible worse chance for a player like Jameer Watkins next year if he does return. If he doesn't get a first-round promise, I would expect him to be back because the NIL money for a player like him is better than those second-round, or two-way deals, 10 days and all that stuff. So first-round guarantees, probably have to take that. Second round, not so much, at least not anymore in the NIL era. Chaz Lanier from North Florida, a lot of talk. He was very, not on anyone's radar 2 years ago, has a huge season, averages 20 points per game for North Florida, shot 44% from long range. He is going through testing the NBA waters, but Kentucky is really after him. There's set aside opportunity, playing time, and NIL. So it'll be the best opportunity for Chaz Lanier to get in front of even more scouts and fans, media, everything. So I think he does ultimately return and goes to Kentucky as well. But we'll see what happens there. Kentucky has a few more spots. Jalen Wells of Washington State, still a top name in the transfer portal. He was that D2 All-American from Sonoma State. Comes into Washington State last year with little fanfare, not a lot of people talking about him. He has a absolutely huge season, nearly 45% from the field shooter, almost 13 points, 5 rebounds. The stats may sound just okay, but the latter half of the season, he was the best player on Washington State, even more so than Miles Rice, and very, very important, and one of the major reasons why the Cougars made the tournament for the first time in 16 years. I do not think he will return, but he technically has the option, and he is one of the better names left if he does return to the collegiate ranks. Cam Christie from Minnesota is testing the waters as well. I do expect him to be back. We'll see what happens there. He can put up points in a hurry, about a 40% three-point shooter. Always going to be room for those guys in high major programs. Minnesota has gone through a lot of changes. They do keep Dawson Garcia, but losing Cam Christie is a little bit hurtful there. But I think he'll land well. Ultimately, we'll see what happens. Wooga Poplar of Miami, another player that's in the kind of last 10 to 11 names that are still pretty high end. Miami's been gutted by the transfer portal. They're only a couple of years removed from the major tournament run that they made with Nigel Pack and Norchad Omier. Wooga Poplar has a ton of potential offers. He's heard from Arizona State, Kansas, Ole Miss, St. John's, Villanova, Kentucky. The list goes on and on. So assuming he's back, and I believe he will have no shortage of suitors. Has already made several contact calls, visits, all that stuff with some big programs. Dylan Mitchell is still out there as well. It came out that he wanted to transfer last year, but he didn't hit the portal in time. He was testing the NBA last year, decided to come back, but he missed the portal deadline, so he stayed at Texas another season. That wasn't known last year. It is this year. He hit the portal. He's visited Miami. Cincinnati has emerged as a big-time candidate to land him. Cincinnati has a really nice returning roster. Dylan Mitchell on that team would be interesting. So we'll see what happens there with Dylan Mitchell. He has a lot of improvement to do. He's got a lot of development still, but he is a former McDonald's All-American, and he is a big name front court player that there is a shortage of. The portal has, 1,000+ players, but there are a lot of combo guards, as you would imagine. Big men are coming at a premium. Talked about Hawkins. JT Toppin, he went through the G League draft camp. He did fairly well in the combine, doing some stuff there. He has 3 years of eligibility. He is a big-time name if he decides to come back. Mountain West co-freshman of the year. I do think he'll ultimately come back, and he will have any program that he wants. Jackson Robinson is still doing his thing. He played in the scrimmages today, I believe. Did transfer from BYU. The obvious choice would be for him to follow Coach Pope to Kentucky. They do have a spot earmarked for him if he decides to return. There's been a lot of talk. Aaron Torres, somebody that I watch a lot, he does daily transfer portal shows. He had mentioned that Jackson kind of sounded like he just didn't want to do the college thing anymore. If you've been playing 4 or 5 years, I get it. You got to go to school. A lot of people forget that. Got to do the daily class thing. It just might be done. There will probably be more money in the collegiate ranks for him than the NBA ranks, at least right now. But if you don't want to wake up every day and do algebra, I understand. And then that's pretty much the top names there. Trevin Brazil from Arkansas, he's in the portal still. He's doing the NBA draft water thing. I think he'll ultimately come back. He has been very good last year. Was kind of in that logjam for Arkansas, coming back from an injury, but I think ultimately he'll be a highly sought-after player there, depending on what he decides to do. And then A.J. Hoggard from Michigan State. Tom Izzo was the one that said Hoggard will not be back. He didn't announce it. Izzo did. They didn't want him in Michigan State anymore. That's kind of a bummer. He did enter the NBA draft. I think he'll be back. He has 1 season left. The Huskies were in on him like a week or two ago. We're pretty well set at guard, so I don't know that he makes a lot of sense. But a veteran guard with tournament experience, there's a team out there that could definitely use him. All right, so that is the happenings of who is still left in the portal. Let's move over to talk about some of the draft stuff that happened. I want to start with the G League Elite Camp, which took place, a week ago, a little under that, and look at some of the box scores and who stood out. And you had a chance to watch on the G League channel all of these games to really kind of go beyond the numbers as well. The first game that took place was the Boogie Ellis show and Jadon Lede. Boogie Ellis earned an invite from the G League Elite Camp to the NBA Draft Combine because of this performance. His second game was okay, but the first game there, he was an absolute animal. 23 points scored. He hit a couple of threes, 7 of 12 from the field, 4 assists, 4 rebounds, 4 steals. He was everywhere, by far one of the best players in that game. And he was playing on a team that included Wooga Poplar, another hopeful, Nate Tomlin, Jesse Edwards, Xavion Lee, the Princeton kid, Jadon Lede, Emmanuel Miller, Chaz Lanier, a lot of these names, fringe candidates in the portal, recognize it. Jadon Lede had 14 and 6 in that one. And then the big story, Enrique Freeman from Akron, who was just an absolute monster for multiple seasons for Akron, a great DFS play for us. He's going to go down as one of the best players in Akron in the last decade. He had a nice outing in the tournament as well. I really thought Akron would pull that upset off, but it didn't happen. He had 12.7 rebounds, a steal. He was really solid. Played on a team with Ugonna Onyenso, Jameer Nelson, Isaiah Stevens, Garwi Duell, and Blake Hinson. You saw guys like Isaiah Stevens who did really well at the collegiate ranks, but in this format, he kind of struggled, and that was worrisome. And then you're seeing players like Freeman who are doing really well, or Boogie Ellis in that isolation style who are playing extremely well. So Boogie Ellis, Jesse Edwards in that one had 13 and 7 as well. He was another player that got invited to the next round there to play in the draft combine. All right, game 2, the standout players there, Arthur Kaluma. is in the transfer portal as well. He had 15 points, 9 rebounds, 4 block shots. He was phenomenal. He was one of the best players on the floor, and Kaluma is somebody that I think we'll look back on and be like, man, he couldn't get it going. Like, he was a solid performer at the collegiate level, but nobody would ever say he was truly elite. I think we all kind of expected him to make this huge jump, and he just never really made it. And then you're going to see him in the NBA here in a couple of years as in a rotation spot, contributing at a high level. I hope he comes back, but we'll see. He played extremely well here. 15 and 9, as I said, with 4 block shots. Bayandongo had 11, 5 and 5. It was a really impressive outing. He's a Georgia Tech kid. I was shocked about his passing. Like, we saw it at times at Georgia Tech, but he was really, his vision as a big man was really solid in this game. Jalen House had 12 points. Keon Brooks scored 14 points in 14 minutes. Shout out to my Husky. And then Aaron Estrada had 16. Walter Clayton had 14 and 5 rebounds. Both Clayton and Estrada playing on the same team. They were both 2 of the best performers of the day. Notable struggles for Caleb Love, who shot 3 of 9. We'll see what happens there. Anton Watson, who unfortunately suffered a bit of an injury that kind of took him out of the equation. And Matthew Morrell, Adema Ball, who had 8 rebounds, pull up his stats here, and 11 points. He actually played pretty well in game 2 of the G League. All right, the next day here in day 2, the final day of the games, Enrique Freeman again played extremely well, 15 points and 6 rebounds. So both games that he's played in the scrimmages, he was a top player. Blake Hinson had 18 and 6. Really nice outing for him. Jalen House played fairly well. Mentioned that he had 12 points in that first one, 17 in the second. Could not make a 3, but he was very good driving to the basket, getting fouls, drawing and initiating contact. That was something to see there, and I think he does ultimately work his way into an NBA contract as well. Isaiah Stevens, who struggled in the first one, kind of struggled again, but he did have 6 assists. He was very good as the main facilitator and initiator, but did not look for his shot, did have 4 turnovers, just never truly looked comfortable. I do worry about Isaiah Stevens a little bit here as he goes. Jaron Stevenson was also at the G League, but he will be back playing for Alabama, a top 5 Alabama program. He played fairly well, hit a couple of threes, 7 points, only played like 15 minutes, but Jaron Stevenson's going to be a pretty good piece for Alabama this time. All right, and then the final game of the G League, we saw Emmanuel Miller. He played really well. Isaac Jones for Washington State, who was just an absolute monster throughout the G League camp, both games. He had 22 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists in that second game. Standout performer, one of the best performances of the G League camp. He was an easy pick for them to take him on to the draft combine. He was just a step above the rest of the big men there. Walter Clayton, another solid outing, 17 points and 4 rebounds. He was not asked to go to the combine, but he was definitely good. Aaron Estrada showed struggles shooting the ball that second day, but he had 10 assists. I think Aaron Estrada will have no shortage of suitors there if he doesn't get drafted in the G League, making some sort of 2-way deal or a second-round draft pick. Chaz Lanier was just okay. Nate Tomlin had a nice game off the bench, 16 points, 4 rebounds. Nate Tomlin, Isaac Jones, Enrique Freeman, Jesse Edwards, and Boogie Ellis. Those were the 5 players that were selected to move on from the G League to the NBA draft combine. They were the top performers. Walter Clayton, very comfortable. Looked like he would be ready now. He could make the jump. I think that it's pretty clear, though, that he will return to Florida. Florida is going to be very good. Clayton is going to have a massive season. Zion Pullen is done. We know Micah Hanlogden is going to medical redshirt for the year. We're talking about a Walter Clayton just smash spot. We'll see if Riley Kugel ends up going back to Florida. Kansas kind of, the talk is that his transcripts, his credits didn't transfer there, whatever. his position filled up quick. They got 3 other guys that play a similar position as him. Say what you will, however it happened. But Hugo, may or may not have to go back to Florida. We'll see. But either way, Walter Clayton is going to be a Marcus Howard level scorer this season for Florida, and his usage rate's probably going to touch 35 to 40% a lot of the time. Caleb Love, still a big decision. He didn't shoot particularly well either day. We'll see what happens there. Wooga Poplar, I'm fairly certain he'll be back. He did look better. He scored 18 points in that second game. He did take 15 shots, though. He did make 8, so he was fairly efficient, but a lot of volume there compared to everybody else. We'll see what happens with that. And then the Princeton kid, he was a little out of his element, had 6 points, 5 rebounds, but just remember him for Ivy League slates or Princeton betting opportunities. Xavion Lee, he's going to be a stud in the Ivy League. He already was. All right, let's move on to what's happening in the NBA draft combine right now. A lot of stories the first day with the drills. They do the cone drills. I have to ask, like, how adequate those drills are right now. You saw like Zach Edey do his cone drills, and it was like, I'm sure he was faster than I could have done. So don't let me sit here and act like I'm some sort of armchair quarterback. Like, if I was out there, like, let me tell you something, guys. I sold I'm in the day job. I do a lot of antique sales and like industrial equipment, cars. Like, I'm pretty versatile to the day job. It gives me a lot of freedom, and that's why I like to do it, because I'm able to work on my true passion here, which is talking, collegiate sports with you guys. I had an old restaurant industrial fridge. God, it had to be like 350 pounds, and I sold it to this older lady. And normally, like, I got the dolly and I lean like these furniture pieces on my shoulder a little bit, and I just do whatever. That wouldn't work with 350 pounds. And by the end of it, and it was done, got it in her car, like, I was blowing air. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, I could do the cone drill faster than Zach Edey. Like, I'm not Adam Young. Shout out to Adam Young. Great editor, but, huge Zach Edey hater. But those drills, man, it just didn't look very, very appealing. Whatever. What did look appealing was the 3-point shooting that we saw from Zach Edey and Donovan Clingan. Both were hitting, and obviously it's a little different taking spot up threes from the same spot over and over and over and over and over again, as it is to being in a game and pulling up and having somebody run you off the line, all that stuff. So, but they look good. Donovan Clingan, I think Donovan Clingan might be a little bit better than people expect, especially with the range that he's shown. Zach Edey, I think he'll be like a viable role player for years. I think he'll eventually kind of fizzle out like Boban did, but man, both were doing it in their drills there. Bronny James, the announcement came out that he is going to stay in the draft. He did a real nice job. We're going to get into the box scores here. His drills were solid. His 3-point shooting was solid. I think this is my own personal take, and I've listened to a lot of opinions on Bronny from the CBS guys like Gary Parrish, Matt Norlander. I listened to Aaron Torres's take on it, Field of 68. Like, I like to listen to the different takes, see where I differ. And most had us, and I like to be a contrarian, not just for the reason of being a contrarian, but because I have pretty strong takes, and I don't follow the crowd. I have my own thoughts. But I do pretty well fall in line with everybody else on this one, and you guys can let me know what you think as well. He clearly would have been better suited. And again, I'm going to stop and say, I don't know basketball better than LeBron James. I don't pretend to. I'm not under some impression that I'm like, the super talent evaluator. I watch a lot of games. We do this, and like, we can pick out who's going to be good and bad, but like, what player not the son of LeBron James or a, high-end NBA star is going to get a look, and it's not just about his stats. We know his stats at USC were not great. He comes off a cardiac arrest. The fact that he was even able to play a couple months later, like huge, like kudos. Remember when Key Johnson had his heart thing on the court? Like that was really scary stuff. Took him a year to come back. He came back, and like that's just amazing. Bronny came back just a couple months later. Clearly, far more raw in that setting, coming from the high school ranks to the collegiate ranks. Then you go from collegiate to NBA. Like there's a reason why there's so few spots at the NBA level. And most of us realize by the time we get into JV and varsity basketball that we're probably not going to be the next Michael Jordan. So with Bronny, I would say if his dad and this, and it sounds so like negative to say, but there's no other way to get around it. Like if his dad wasn't LeBron James, we're not having a conversation about him getting drafted. The play and the plan is for whatever team Bron's on, likely the Lakers, to pick up Bronny, whether that's a second round draft pick or what they'd probably prefer to do, pick him up undrafted as a free agent. There's of course talk will another team step in and draft him and be like, okay, you got to give us, everything, king's ransom if you want Bronny from us, or we're going to sign LeBron, whatever. I don't know that that's going to happen. We'll see. He's going to probably be a G League two-way guy. His defense is fine, like above average when healthy and good. He's a better shooter than he showed at USC. Andy Enfield doesn't really run a great system. We're going to see that. He went to SMU. He has great players that are going to be playing for him at SMU, but I think we're going to be disappointed with some of their inconsistencies, which is normal for an Andy Enfield team. But I think Bronny would have been suited for another collegiate season. Now, I personally wanted to see him go to Duquesne's. Of course, Drew Joyce, the third, coaches there, one of LeBron's high school teammates. Dan Brott, who was the coach of Duquesne's, was the St. Mary's or St. Vincent coach, and a lot of familiarity there. He could have gone to Duquesne's, been the alpha, built up more of a resume, and gotten maybe drafted higher. Money is clearly no object for them, right? So his draft position may not matter as much to him as it would somebody else in a different situation, as in their dad's not LeBron James, but a similar situation in that maybe their stats weren't great. They were a big-time high school prospect, but clearly another year to sharpen the knives, develop, and really move up in the draft. That would be more of a priority. So with that being said, I do think my own opinion is that Bronny should have come back to the collegiate ranks. But again, I'm not smarter than LeBron James about basketball. So he wants his kid to beat the NBA. Somebody's going to pick him up, and he can get I played with my son a la Ken Griffey Jr. and Ken Griffey Sr. growing up in Seattle. Got the chance to see those two. Cool story. Difference there is Ken Griffey Jr. was a generational talent. I don't know that Bronny James is. And again, that comes off super negative. I'm not trying to. It's just the reality of the situation. So with that being said, Bronny looked great in the day one drills that he did. All right, so let's get into game one so far. There's been 4 scrimmage games thus far. Game one, which took place yesterday, like early afternoon. This was Team Forham Kelly versus Team St. Andrews. I'm going to read off the rosters first so you know what we're dealing with. The Forham Kelly team, Jalen Wells, Ulrich Kamchi, Justin Edwards, Cam Spencer, our dude, Reese Beekman, Jameer Watkins, Isaac Jones, Nikola Dershich, KJ Simpson, Jonathan Mogbo, and Coleman Hawkins. Pretty nasty team. Nasty as in good, as my son would say. On the St. Andrews squad, Baylor Shireman, JT Toppin, Adeem Bana, AJ Johnson, Bronny James, Antonio Reeves, Jesse Edwards, not to be confused with Justin, Dylan Jones, Weber State stud, Alex Caravan, playing against this guy, Cam Spencer, and Mark Sears. Now, there are a ton of names in this game that are very good possibilities of going back to the collegiate level for us. and some are 50-50. The two 50-50s would be Alex Caravan and Mark Sears. Now, Mark Sears didn't play in that one, dealing with some, stuff that he just wasn't healthy. Alex Caravan did not start, but he played about 19 minutes. It was a relatively lackluster 19 minutes, 4 points, 2 rebounds, had a couple of assists, shot about 2 for 6. In drills and three-point shooting, especially, Caravan looked like an assassin. Now, I personally would love to see him come back, but this is going to be very obvious, right? It's going to be the same thing. Does he get a GM, a scout, whatever, to give him a first-round promise? If Caravan gets a first-round promise and thus a guaranteed contract, he won't be back. If he can't secure that first-round promise, and even when you do get those promises, there's nothing that says, hey, we have to keep it. You'd like to think that, but we've heard stories and had players talk about that before. If he doesn't get that promise and he's a second-round guy, then you have to think that Connecticut has a really good chance to get Caravan back. The money will be better than a second-round pick or a two-way contract, whatever. And this will give him an opportunity to go from being the 4th, 5th, sometimes 6th option the last 2 years to being an alpha. And Connecticut has some guys waiting in the wings. They've got McNeely, who's probably a one and done. My guy Jalen Stewart, who I think is going to take a huge step forward. Solo Ball, Jaden Ross. They obviously got Aiden Mahaney. Like, they have the pieces to be fine. But if they get Caravan, you can rest assured that Coach Hurley is going to diagram and build a lot of that program around Caravan, especially offensively. And you'll see a new look to him. You'll go from thinking he's a high-level role guy to now being an alpha. And if he can step into that role and do it well, then you're talking about making that jump into a guaranteed first-round pick. Obviously, next year's draft is probably going to be a little bit better talent-wise. An overall expectation for NBA rotational players to come out. So you have to weigh that. But I would love to see Caravan come back and try to do the three-peat thing and be alpha. So we'll see what happens there. Bronny James, he had 4 points, 4 rebounds, 2 steals, did turn it over 3 times, shot 8 times. Don't love seeing that. Shot 2 of 8, 0 of 4 from long range. 3-point shooting is going to have to get figured out. JT Toppin, our dude, he had a double-double, 11 points, 10 rebounds. Now, I think JT Toppin could realistically make himself a first-round pick, and I think that a lot of teams would love to take a player like that. Now, selfishly, I want him to go back to the collegiate ranks, and if he does, he's going to be, depending on where he lands from the transfer portal, he's going to be a big-time star. And he would only help himself overall. The NIL money for him would be massive, so we'll see what happens there for him. Baylor Shireman, he was fantastic. Plus 20. If you're a plus-minus guy, plus 20 for Baylor Shireman, best of the game, 17 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists. 1 assist and 3 steals, 6 of 11 shooting, knocked down 3 triples. Baylor Shireman, an alpha at Creighton, came over from South Dakota State where he put up some big numbers there. He's going into a situation with the NBA where he's not going to be a star, right? He's going to be more of a role guy, but he's such an elite shooter and scorer, and he carries himself with a Dante DiVincenzo type of swagger. Thought you guys might like that reference. And he's going to find a role in this league. So Baylor Shireman, he looked very good. No surprise there that he was one of the standouts of the day. On the other side here, the Foreham Kelly team, Justin Edwards had a nice outing, hit a couple threes, 14 points, had a steal, had a block, 5 rebounds, a couple of assists. He's going to be one of those guys that is better in the NBA than we saw during his one collegiate season. I think Justin Edwards is actually kind of a sneaky player in this draft. Jalen Wells didn't look particularly well against the upgraded talent. See what happens there. Jameer Watkins, same thing, was held to 2 points, 15 minutes off the bench. He was better today, though. We'll get to that. KJ Simpson had 16 points on 13 shot attempts. He had 3 rebounds. He also had 3 steals. He was very, very good. Coleman Hawkins had 7 points, just 15 minutes off the bench. He's not really, I mean, he looked good, but in his short minutes, but I don't think he's trying to put too much out there, it seems. Isaac Jones, who earned the invite from the G League draft camp, he was great. 19 minutes, 14 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, had 3 steals. He's playing his way into, if he's not going to get drafted, he's going to be a priority undrafted free agent, the way he is playing and kind of rising up the boards. Similar to collegiate DFS fan favorite Kenneth Lofton, who just crushed it at the G League camp, got the invite, crushed it at the combine, and whenever he steps on the court, even in the NBA level, man, he's just so good. Like, I see the trajectory for Isaac Jones with the way he's rising through the ranks. All right, so let's go to the second game from day one. This is Team Love versus Team Herskew. This had our guy Jamal Shed, who is healthy enough to play. I think one of you always have like those what if moments. Like, for a lot of people, it's like, what if COVID didn't happen and that Dayton team with Obi Toppin got a chance to probably be a 1 seed? That's a big what if. My what if of the last like 5 to 6 years is going to be, what if Jamal Shed didn't get hurt in the game against Duke? What if he, the way he was playing in that first half, got a second half, obviously dispatched of Duke? I truly think that. Had a chance to get to the Final Four. Maybe they, stand in the way of UConn. Who knows what could have happened? Really talked myself into him coming back for 1 more year at Houston, but, support whatever decision he's going to make. So far, looks like a good one because he's been playing really well at the combine. So, Team Love roster: Kashad Johnson, Enrique Freeman, who got the invite from the G League, Oso Ighodaro, Trey Alexander, Jamal Shed, my dude, Nick Clifford, David Jones, and Fali Dante. Absolute monster tournament performance. Harrison Ingram and Peyton Sanford. Team Herskew: Boogie Ellis, Michael Ajayi, Trevon Brazil, Pele Larson, Quentin Post, Trenton Flowers, AJ Mitchell, Big West shout out, Jackson Robinson, Nate Tomlin, Jalen Bridges, and Azan Amanza. So, top performers here. Harrison Ingram had 14 and 4. He looked really good. Harrison Ingram looks like a prototypical 3-and-D type of NBA prospect. Hit, 3 triples in that one? Jamal Shed, 14 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists, and a steal. Did just Jamal Shed things. Jamal Shed is going to be one of those guys that works himself into a NBA rotational guy, and I wouldn't be shocked to see him start on a winning team sooner rather than later. Enrique Freeman, 17 points and 4 rebounds, the Akron stud, giving it to the opposing front court of Nate Tomlin, Jalen Bridges, and the boys. We saw AJ Mitchell. He played really well as a facilitator of the offense, had 7 assists, looked really good there. Boogie Ellis, he had 11 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. Kind of showed off more than just his scoring, more well-rounded performance for him. And then the kid that played on Adelaide last year, Trenton Flowers, he was rock solid, 12 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists. Some really, strong performances there from several players that, depending on what situation they land in, could turn themselves into long-term rotational pieces. All right, day 2, game 3. Now, Coleman Hawkins didn't have a big game on day 1. He came off the bench. This time, he got a chance to start. He played 23 minutes. Oh, you're going to give me a start? Let me show you what I can do. Knocked down 3 triples, 17 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, blocked a shot, looked every bit of the NBA prospect that he is. And there are collegiate teams that are obviously mouth-watering at the opportunity to get him into their program. The North Carolina Tar Heels are one such program. Jameer Watkins, 12 points, 4 assists, 4 rebounds. He looked much better. KJ Simpson, who had the nice first day, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, a block, a steal, 11 points. Showed his versatility, much like Jamal Shed on day one. There has been a ton of talk about Jonathan Mogbo. He hasn't been a big-time scorer. He filled it up, right? He had strong peripheral stats throughout his time at San Fran. He has really been impressing with his defense, his rim protection, his ability to get it done on the glass. And I am seeing a lot of chatter. I pay attention to all his draft talk and media and everything. And Mogbo's name has come up several times over the past 36 hours. But you look at his individual box, you might not be super impressed, but he is working his way. He had 3 blocks, 3 steals, 5 rebounds, 2 points. Points don't matter all the time. We don't need scorers at every single spot. Mogbo is turning heads with his tough play. Jalen Wells was better. He knocked down 4 of 11. Not great, but he scored 13 points, contributed in other categories, had a couple of steals, kind of probably 50-50 there if he's going to return. The Gonzaga transfer from Pepperdine, Michael Ajayi, he had 14 points and 7 rebounds. If he keeps playing that well, he may not come back to the collegiate ranks, but Gonzaga's built themselves a nice little roster, so they'd be okay either way. But they are going to be a legitimate Final Four contender if he decides to return to the collegiate ranks. All right, let's go to the second game of day 2 and the last one. Between Team Love and St. Andrews, Jamal Shed again got the start. He only shot 3 of 11. Don't love that, but still filled it up. A couple of blocks, a steal, 5 assists, 2 rebounds. He had 13 points, finding a way to be productive. Peyton Sandfort did not look good. That's notable because he could have come back for another season, didn't, and I worry that he's going to end up being on the outside looking in. And Fali Dante got a chance to start. He was in foul trouble. Enrique Freeman, another solid outing. He did have 12 points. Oso Ighodaro had 11 and 4, and Trey Alexander showed off his scoring prowess, hit a couple of threes on his way to 13 and 5. On the St. Andrews squad that got the win, not that matters, Baylor Shireman came off the bench today. They give the other guys that didn't start the opportunity to start. Still rock solid, had 9 points in just 17 minutes, along with a couple of rebounds, 3 assists, and a steal. Mark Sears did play today after not playing yesterday. Played about 22 minutes, 11 points, assist, 2 turnovers, not great, 5 fouls there. He just looked a little bit out of sorts there. It seems like there's a good chance that Alabama will get him back, at least initially. A lot of chatter about Adeem Bana today. He had 10 points, 8 rebounds. His measurements were impressive. Seems like he may end up being a higher draft pick than expected initially. And then Alex Caravan, he brought it today, 4 of 5, hit his only 3, 12 points, 3 rebounds, showed a little bit more versatility, handled himself well in 20 minutes. Really like Alex Caravan. JT Toppin, 10 points, 7 rebounds, 2 steals off the bench. I'm starting to think JT Toppin might not be back at the collegiate ranks, so we'll see what happens there. But those are the standout performers so far throughout the G League camp, which is now over, and of course the draft combine. There's still a lot of dates and stuff to happen. We have our remaining deadlines to pull out of the draft. There will be further workouts. There's still a ton up in the air. The transfer portal is still going strong. Of course, there's nobody else entering the portal, but we mentioned there's still some very high-level players that are available. For those that have been following me on the journey with Carl Daughtery Jr., the Central Arkansas transfer that I'm really close with, him and his folks, just a quick update there. He has been contacted by Fullerton, Cal State Fullerton, repeatedly. UC Davis is in the mix now. Winthrop has reached out, and even VCU is now starting to poke around. So good things happening for my guy, Carl Jr. And Niagara, the MAAC team, which I told them that conference is much better than people realize, has also started to push for Carl Jr. So we should have an answer here, hopefully, in the next couple of weeks, maybe even sooner. And if we do, we will have a live show in which Carl Jr. does make that announcement for where he's going to play his next season of college basketball on the Super Show, which I'm super excited about that opportunity and will be deeply indebted for him to allow us to do that. All right, so lots of fun, intriguing things happening. I'm going to wrap on that. We don't need to drone on here. Good amount of viewers there. I appreciate your guys' support once again. Really pleased with FTN and Chief Content Officer Mike Randall, who allows me to continue to go live each and every week. It would be very easy for him to fold up shop and say, we'll see you in August, but he doesn't. He gives me this platform, which I'm appreciative of. You guys seem to like it. Just also want to put out there, there won't be like articles or shows for the TBT either, but I am very involved with the TBT, do a draft with some guys, go on some shows, watch all the games, have some relationships with some of the GMs. Like, I'm really into TBT. Typically, we get prize picks, prop betting, and DK props as well for those. So there will be content for that via the Discord and also free plays on my Twitter, which I did each of the last 3 seasons. During COVID and TBT was going on, we had DFS for it on DraftKings. Every year since, I've asked them to bring it back. They emphatically tell me no every year. It won't stop me from asking, but rest assured we will have money-making opportunities in the TBT for prop betting and prize picks, which should be pretty fun. A lot of the rosters that are being announced have some real serious talent this year. TBT, if you haven't had a chance to watch it in the past, certainly pay attention to it this summer. It is one of the more exciting and entertaining basketball tournaments that you'll see beyond the big dance in March. Also, WNBA, it's exploding in popularity. Women's basketball in general is blowing up. So just because we don't have official written content, again, doesn't mean we won't be covering it to a degree between Zach and I in the Discord. We'll also post my occasional thoughts on Twitter and be watching a significant amount of the games and trying to continue to punish these books with these soft props, especially early in the morning. Gotta tell you right now, this first week or two of the season, get down to the book, or if you do it online, whatever, get them in early because they will be changed by game time or several hours before. All right, with that being said, we will get out of here. We'll be back next week, same time, same place. We are going to start having some recordings with interviews that we do ahead of time. So we'll pop on, introduce that, and then play the clip for you. If that happens with Carl Daugherty Jr.'s announcement, we'll be going live whenever that happens on our Twitter account and also on the FTN YouTube channel. So make sure you guys are supporting that. Make sure you're following us on YouTube, on IG, TikTok, Twitter, and everywhere else. Your continued support means the world to me. Thank you very much. We are less than 110 days from week 0. The week 0 schedule is out for college football. We will be turning the page in about a month and be delving into college football previews between myself and Jake Kuchek. Lots of fun stuff. We will be doing projections, ownership stuff, all of that, and hopefully, fingers crossed, working on an optimizer as well. Thanks, guys. Take care. Have a great week, rest of your week, and we'll see you next week. FTN Network, Super Show, Dub Deuces. I'm out. Take care.